And yeah, thank you all so much for taking the time to be a part of this conversation. I think this is a really challenging, but also really stimulating time. So as we often do, I think in the WOW Leader community, I think we have a lot to gain from comparing notes and sharing experiences from the past months from our work during social distancing. So we've arranged to hear from a few specific WOW leaders, and your questions, ideas, and contributions are also very welcome. We'll try to keep this relatively informal. So before I give the floor to Kendall, who'll be facilitating, I just wanted to frame this call by saying that in some ways, I think the past 2.5 months have really been a crash course in adapting and in embracing some new technologies. I think many of us are more well-versed in Zoom than we ever expected to be before this. And also right now we're in a very different place from when we began this conversation in late March. At that point, a lot of people were really scrambling to figure out what to do with events that were sort of immediately on the horizon. And at the same time, there was a lot of uncertainty about what kind of timeline we were looking at. And now I think we have the benefit of some experience behind us and also some foresight when it comes to looking at events or workshops or outreach that we have on the docket for later this summer or into the fall. And I also think it's a little bit easier to think ahead and envision what a soft return to normal might look like in phases over the coming months. So one question that I wanted to throw out there for us to keep in mind as we talk is, as we've been pushed to use technologies, use new technologies, get our target audiences to use technologies, and sort of expand the outreach toolkit. Have you had any discoveries of things that have worked so well that you see a place for them to be retained in your toolkit, even post-COVID? I've been thinking a little bit about how the current challenges are really pushing us to find new ways to reach new audiences. So I'd be interested to hear from others about what you've been finding in that respect. And with that, I will turn it over to Kendall.
Awesome, thanks, Leonora. So just real quick to go over a little bit of the plan for today. Like Leonora said, it's going to be fairly informal, but we do want to keep it, just kind of targeted and relevant to things that folks across regions can utilize. So first, we're going to start off with Laurel and Jennifer talking a little bit about planning a virtual chainsaw workshop. And then Angie will hear some lessons from Facebook. And then Nancy and Allison will kind of share some experiences with us about working on a virtual retreat. So with that being said, Laurel and Jennifer, if you guys want to go ahead and share, now's the time.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm actually going to let Laurel take the lead on this discussion, but I will preface it with we are just still in the planning stages, so we actually haven't done the workshop yet. So everything we're going to be talking about is kind of from that perspective. I know Amanda and some others have already done the actual workshop, so we'd love to get feedback from others as well, but I'll let Laurel take it.
Yeah, and Jen, jump in whenever I inevitably forget something or you have something to add. But yeah, so we're in the process of planning the workshop that we did a couple of these in 2019 and had a pretty good little thing going and a pretty consistent planning team and a consistent instructor. Then obviously COVID came around this spring and it became clear that we weren't going to be able to do an in-person course. So we're going to be hosting it in a couple weeks in June. It's going to be a 4-hour block of time in the afternoon. I think 1 to 5 is what we settled on. We're going to use Zoom. We're fortunate that our same instructors The main instructor is a contractor we work with, and he's a man. And then we have 2 colleagues from NC State and the military now who are women who are very experienced with chainsaws, and they'll be instructing as well. So we are going to do a combination of sort of live presentation by Joe, our main instructors, with supplemented by Laura and Liz. Use breakout rooms to let folks kind of go out and be able to discuss after sections, various sections of the presentations. And we're hoping to split those up by chainsaw experience, or if everyone's about at the same spot there, split folks up by region or county or something like that. And we also recorded a couple videos. One of our instructors, Laura, recorded some on her iPhone that turned out really well. Videos of her talking about some female specific considerations. So, you know, jewelry and hair and PPE fit, starting the saw, some of those sort of things that we usually talk about in the workshop. And then we also met up with Liz and Joe, our main instructor, at one of the school forests that NC State owns, and took some video of them that we're going to use during the workshop. And like Jen said, we haven't actually done this yet, so any lessons learned are sort of in progress, and I'm sure will change after we actually do the workshop. But overall, we've been super fortunate. The folks we're working with to plan this have been super enthusiastic about moving it virtual and really flexible. We've been able to use all of the same instructors. Unintended upside is that the money we had set aside for some other workshops that ended up being canceled did enable us to purchase insurance for Joe. So we're hopefully, once in-person workshops are more on the table, we can keep doing those through 2020 and 2021, which is great. I think sort of to Leonora's question that she brought up at the beginning, one of the things that I think has been really good about this whole situation is that there is a better understanding of addressing accessibility concerns through technology. So some folks who just may not be able to make it to a one-day workshop can hopefully join this. Obviously, it brings up other concerns about who has internet access and who doesn't. And we haven't necessarily found a good way around that. People are going to have to be able to use Zoom and use the internet to join the workshop, and that's just a limitation. But I think moving forward in other events I'm involved with, there's a better understanding that we need to address safety concerns or consider recording presentations and make them available later. And I think that's a really good thing that we should all keep trying to do post-COVID. We did have some equipment malfunctions that we're still sort of figuring out how to navigate. The camera that we use to record some of the footage with Joe and Liz, our instructors, is one that we don't use super often. And it turns out the battery we had for it needed to be replaced. So we ended up sort of having to switch off between Jen's personally owned point and shoot camera and the actual video camera. And then the batteries for the microphone for the actual video camera, it turns out, also needed to be replaced. So we have some video that doesn't have sound. I think we got everything that we needed to, but that was definitely a challenge that if we do anything like this again, we'll have to make sure we sort of better prepare for. It's also a little difficult to advertise virtual programs, I think. Usually when we do these, we send stuff out to folks who are active in that specific area, and they can send it out to their people. And it's good that everyone can come, but also makes it sort of challenging to think through, like, okay, who's really going to be interested? Who do we send this out to every extension agent, or we just pick a couple that we know are active? And we're still sort of working through that. And also it just takes more time than I thought it would. I think my takeaway from all of this moving to virtual stuff is that it seems like it's going to be, oh yeah, we'll just move to virtual, you know, it's relatively easy. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it just ends up taking much more time than we anticipated. But hopefully it goes well. People seem excited about it, and we've had a couple people register. We just started advertising it late last week. So we've had a couple of people register, and hopefully we have a full class, because we're capping it at 20. I don't think I mentioned that, but we are going to limit it to that.
Yeah. And I was going to mention too, Angela just also asked about charging. So we kind of used Amanda's and company's idea of charging. We wanted to charge something just to get buy-in, because I feel like with a lot of the virtual and I'm guilty of this myself, I'll sign up for a webinar fully intending to go, it's a free webinar, but then a meeting gets scheduled or something happens and I can't make it. And so I feel like, if people actually pay something for it, especially with it being a virtual, that they'll be more likely to come. So we wanted to charge something, but not a lot. So we ended up deciding on $10, which is actually the same amount that we charged for the in-person workshops. And our thought is that we'll give everybody, we're going to create a password protected Google Drive with all of the materials and the PowerPoint presentations and like the resources that we would have provided in person. So they still have access to those types of things. They're obviously not getting a lunch like, they would have normally, but we gave the same option as some of the other virtual ones we've seen, where we said, Laurel created a Google form and said, we understand these are challenging times right now. If you can't afford this, please just send us your information. And the way our registration system works at NC State, people can enter in essentially like a discount code, which would give them the class for free. So if they truly want to come and they just can't pay for the $10, then we wanted to offer that out there. I think Amanda, I saw on your flyer, it was like a $25 pay if you can kind of thing. My boss had suggested doing like a donation, like pay what you think the class is worth type thing, but that got really complicated. So we just kind of stuck with the $10. So I'm not sure if anybody will, need that extra support or not, but we just wanted to offer that out there. And then the question about, are you going to include material about purchasing a chainsaw? Joe goes over some of that in his class. I don't think he has a specific section dedicated to that, but our thought was, after everybody registered, we're going to send out a follow-up email and say, here are the things you need to prepare for this class, and have one of the things being, have your chainsaw with you. So we're going to be just like this. Yeah. On Zoom, we're hoping people will be able to, hold it up in the camera. And if they have specific questions about brands or makes or models or any of that stuff, people can actually physically, see, or they could be looking at their saw as they're doing things. So as Joe's kind of talking about the parts of a saw or the mechanics of it, or where to purchase the saw or how to purchase a saw. Yeah. So usually those sorts of things come up. We're going to try to allow plenty of time for Q&A. And
to Angie's other question.
What was the other one?
We are still fleshing out the agenda and how it's going to actually look, but I think our idea is that most of it is going to be discussion based and Joe talking and the ability to ask questions in the chat box and then discuss in those breakout rooms. So we're not anticipating that people are going to be watching videos for 2 hours or an hour or anything like that.
Yeah. The videos that we shot in the field, I'd say range from 30 seconds to the longest one is probably, I don't know, a minute and a half or something like that. So they're just kind of short little clips. And then the ones where the voice didn't record or just he didn't like the way that he worded it in the field or something, we'll just turn the audio off and he kind of can speak to what is being shown in the video on the actual Zoom session rather than relying on the recording itself.
And we also, we have our technology test meeting, I think next week or the week after. So we haven't worked through this yet, but I think we're going to have to ask people to watch those videos on YouTube or something else that's local on their computer, because Zoom just doesn't let you play videos very well. The bandwidth just doesn't work, especially if someone's in a rural area and doesn't have great internet to begin with. So I think we're definitely going to try and limit the amount of time that people have to do that.
Just a quick tip: when we did our workshop, we embedded the links in the agenda. So so we let people, they could look up the videos before or after. And then ours was 2 weekends, so 2 hours one Saturday morning, 2 hours the next Saturday morning, and in between we sent out an email with hyperlinks to more videos and stuff they could check out. We didn't want to scare them with all the videos at first, right in the agenda. So we send an email with some additional information and, videos from our past classes where we've had, women cutting trees or learning how to cut tree cookies and stuff like that. So we sent that in between.
Yeah, those are great ideas.
And also making sure that people know for our other workshops, we've been very clear that like you don't need to buy a chainsaw, because that's always something that people email and ask and say, oh, well, I was going to buy one anyway, I'll go buy one. It's just being very clear that like you'll probably get some good information about what might work well for you during this workshop. So definitely don't go out and buy anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Parnima asked if there was significant drop off between the two sessions. So the dates that we had were April 25th and the following Saturday, May 2nd. We did have a couple of people that dropped off. One, Barb, she was from West Virginia. We had, and then the other person was from New Mexico. So it was like 9 to 11 Eastern time. So something else may have come up early in the morning. But so most of the folks came back, and we also limited our class size, which I think was really good. I know Tish is on here somewhere, our lead chainsaw instructor. But it was good to limit the class size because it kept it more manageable and more intimate and just much more interactive. So we limited it to 20, and that seemed to work well. So only a couple people dropped off, but we had a huge waiting list also. A lot of people really interested and are going to be eager to get the recordings. I just pasted a link to our recordings in the chat. And when you watch them, it's different because like right now we all see each other on Zoom and like we see everybody's faces. In the recording, you just see like my face saying, repeat after me. There are no stupid questions. So it feels a little awkward to like watch the recording of it, but you'll get a sense of like how it works with the real people that were actually there on Zoom at the same time.
And that was one of the things that, I won't say it was disappointing because I definitely understand, but our instructor was not super comfortable with us recording and like sharing that out widely. I think I forget, we'll have to review this, but I think we had decided we could like record it for the participants to look at later. But he did not want to like share that out widely, which I understand, but it's kind of a bummer.
I'm gonna jump in. Sorry, I'm gonna jump in. Oh, go ahead, Tish.
Okay, it's very different, and one of the things that we learned was that it's really important to have someone that can facilitate it and to be looking at the chat box, because Amanda was able to do that, because when you're teaching, and especially in such a small screen, and you're trying to show things, you can't be focused in on the chat box. And so that was very, very helpful. And just the whole spatial transition with the saws and with talking with folks, it was really interesting. And I am very glad we limited it to 20, and I'm glad we had a waiting list, but I will say that I wouldn't do it with more than 20 just because of how everything looks on the screen and just the whole depth perception and fuzziness of things. It just changes the complexity of it. So, but if you have it already pre-recorded, then that might, take a little bit of that out. But I don't know. I think our crew got liked having that interaction because we had a lot of conversations that were going on, and Amanda did a fabulous job managing the chat, and it just worked out really well for us to have that interaction. And so that's just my 2 cents after having gone through it. And I will say the second week was much better than the first week as far as, chainsaws getting aligned and expectations. So.
Okay. Thanks, Tish. On that note, I'm going to facilitate us to the next conversation, but I really appreciate what you said about the chat box, because I've been noticing that there are still some questions. And what I'm going to ask is, for Jennifer and Laurel, if you guys will, and Tish, if you'll check out those questions that are in the chat box and maybe answer them there. And then we'll move on to Angie so that the other folks have enough time to present. So we're going to have Angie. We're going to switch it up pretty quick, so apologies, but we've got Angie who's going to talk to us about lessons from Facebook and social media.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I don't have a formal presentation, but if I could grab, if I could screen share, that might be great. Can that happen?
Yeah, I think, Leonora, is that you?
Yeah. 1 second, Angie.
Yeah, no worries. And then I dropped in a link. It's pretty long and ugly for everyone, but this is kind of the white paper. I do think it's been shared with this group before, but I find I forget things and maybe I don't read all my emails very closely. And so there's a chance that you might have missed it the first time. And so this was a result of this group asking and several other colleagues asking if what we learned about Facebook Live using it, and we did it really quickly when we became homebound. And so myself and a coworker wrote this up, and it's fairly, well, I don't know how long it is. 6 pages, maybe 4 pages. But I was really relatively pleased with how it turned out. One of the things that we ended up doing in, I don't know if it's in this one or we did a slightly different version for extension internally, was really look at the pros and cons between types and qualities and sizes of videos. And so let's see if I have the ability to share my screen. Yeah, okay. So I think you guys should be seeing my screen now. And hopefully you're looking at the tips for Facebook Live. Can someone confirm that? Excellent.
Yes.
See a head nod. Perfect. So this is kind of the bottom. There's this little call out box. Oh, 4 pages. There you go. But these are some of the basics things. So when I first did it, it was related to winner tree identification. And so we did a practice session and then a live session. And then we, my colleagues and I have done several of these now, doing different things. And so we've gotten a little better. And so practice, practice, practice. If you can do that with anybody that lives in your household. So I have I have an 11 and a 14-year-old boy. And so I have a photographer in the house. That 14-year-old can do it. So we have gotten better. If you can do the help in the field, that's great. So if you can have that person in the wings to help facilitate, that would be really great, because it's hard to manage the comments and to do stuff like that when you're in front of the camera. Know the limitations of your equipment. So we have been doing it exclusively on our phones, and the phones, my phone and my data plan has been quite good. Some of my colleagues have had really shoddy data plans, or it has, their connectivity has been really troublesome. So that's a real thing. We've also learned noises are real things. So my phone was quite capable of picking up trains and helicopters, and neither of them were terribly close to me. And I intentionally picked places to video that was relatively far from street noise. But man, the trains and helicopters, I don't really know how to manage that, other than to be aware of it. Then this check your service again. So at least one colleague was trying to operate multiple screens, and one of them was a tablet, and so that had to be connected to the internet. And it became very clear the further she got away from her house, the worse everything became, right? So things we learned. The account lag. So one of the things I deeply dislike about all of this distance education and learning and Zoom calls like this is there's very little audience feedback, right? So if you all fall asleep, it's kind of hard for me to know that. And so we were trying to figure out how we can engage folks. And it turns out that also impacts your algorithm, we're pretty certain. So the more engagement you have in Facebook, the more your Facebook video is likely to show up, right? But it is really hard to do that because there's about a 1-minute lag in a Facebook Live. And to manage that lag is quite legitimately tricky. And then this algorithm thing, I'll talk about that a little bit more, and something we've been trying differently. But the more interactions you get, we think the better your algorithm, the more that will stay around. Facebook videos, kind of stay around forever, I think, unless you choose to take them down. So if you want to use them for a long-term reference, that's a possibility. We haven't entirely been doing that, but I'm going to talk about some of the Facebook Live stuff we've been doing recently, and we'll look at that here in a moment. And then we've been really using a lot of these Facebook's engagement just to keep our audience with us, right? Just to keep everybody engaged. I mean, there's education and it's around forestry and nature for sure, but it's really about maintaining these connections when we can't get together and do what we normally do. So this, I think you've seen before. This is all written up. You have the link. You can't see, but the little presenter dropped down and I can't get to my tabs. Here we go. Another thing that we've been doing is when this first started, a colleague of mine started Trail Tuesday. And so the request was that master naturalists go out and just tell us about their trails on Tuesday. And none of these are very long, and everybody's doing something different. So some people go to a different trail. Some people, I've been doing the same. It's like a 4-minute walk for me up this little forested hillside that I've adopted in Rochester. Other people, one colleague has committed to walk a section of the Douglas Bike Trail and she does 1 minute on it every Tuesday. But if you tag it Trail Tuesday, it becomes searchable in Facebook, right? And so we've just made this a repeat engagement. And if you scroll down, it turns out we have lots and lots of engagement now around Trail Tuesday. And these are all really short. These are all just done as Facebook Lives. And so our audience members just hashtag it, do their video, and then it can show up in the queue. We've also done Nature in Place. And so you can see some of these, a lot of these are double tagged, and that's fine. But we have wondered how much we're going to go back and look at these, but it also gives us an opportunity to look at phenological changes sort of over the state, right? So southern Minnesota doing versus northern Minnesota. And then also, like for my site, every week I'm going the same route. So what are the differences phenologically week over week? And so these are some fun possible outcomes that we might choose to go back and review. Right now, by and large, we're just using them as an engagement tool. Facebook Live, I find pretty easy to use. For me, I just use my camera on my phone. You click the button, it takes about, 30 seconds for it to kind of rev up, and then you're live. And I narrate, again, about 4 minutes of video I do every Tuesday. Some of it I narrate. We've been removing some garlic mustard and a little bit of Dame's Rocket down there. So I've talked about some identification, and there's some emerald ash borer stumps, or some ash stumps because of emerald ash borer removals. And so we've talked about that. I get to the top of the hill, I'm winded, right? I don't necessarily talk the whole way up, and then I'm done. And I get, I'm not advertising these in advance. The time is variable. It's whenever I remember to run out and do it. But I will tell you, my mare is a super regular Facebook follower. And so she is on there often, and she'll wave and do whatever. And then it posts, and I'll get different likes and comments as a follow-up. The other thing on Facebook, you probably know this, but you can always add links or resources or comments or additional images to that post later. So I've come back, and for the garlic mustard, I've added the link to the garlic mustard cookbook, right? So I've talked about it, and then I can go back and add it. So again, like all of these, the more engagement you get, then the more it stays at the top. And so that helps your algorithm. I will say maybe one more thing and then kind of close for questions. So again, I don't think you can see it, but the bar at the top keeps moving up and down. Well, okay, so one of the things that I've been asked is, like, when do you use Facebook and when do you do professional videos? Like, there's a spectrum there, right? So my 4-minute Facebook Live trek up the hill is a really low bar thing. The 30-minute Tree ID Facebook Live is a little higher bar. We practice. I have like an educational agenda. I've like plotted my route in advance, and I got a kid helping me. And then you have a fully professional video. And so this is one of our fully professional videos, Defeating the Killer Vine or Bittersweet Management. You can see it posted 5 years ago, so it's not new, but it has over 30,000 views. And I think we just need to recognize that there's a spectrum, right? And so, doing even a 10-minute chainsaw safety video in Facebook Live is probably not going to be this quality, right? You might not want to keep it around forever and link it when chainsaws come up in the news. And if you realize that content, let's say chainsaw safety, is important to you and you really want to have a good quality video, then like that's its own project, right? Don't try to make everything work in your Facebook Live or in this space that we're in today. So I think it's just important to kind of recognize what your uses and your audiences and your expectations are, and then try to fit the video work into that. And don't make the mistake that everything needs to be everything, right? So there's a continuum there. So I'll keep maybe sharing my screen for now, but I am happy to pause and take questions. Anyway, I'll just pause and take questions.
And you got a question in the chat box.
Yeah,
can you
check
tell
out
us
the
about,
chat box.
Super.
it says,
If you
can
could tell
us
me,
about
I don't actually, yeah.
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
It says, can you tell us about Angie's channel video that's in your toolbar?
Angie's channel.
So on the top of your YouTube, it looks like you might have a YouTube channel.
Okay, so I think I do have a YouTube channel. I don't see it now. Is it there now and I'm missing it? So
We see the link to it.
okay. On the right-hand side?
It's on the top.
I think it's tagged as one of your favorites. Yeah.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Well, let's see. It's been a long time since I've been here. This could be personal. We'll find out.
So what's the purpose of a YouTube channel, I guess?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this one, I do not love it. And this is sort of like the holding ground, if you will. So this was a jumping worm presentation I had to do and having all kinds of troubles sort of getting the technology to work. So this is where things got dropped. None of these are intended to be live and visible.
Got it.
And so this is like, I feel like an agency issue. But we in Extension have I think a not great way of organizing our videos, period. And so, even though I know what these are, and this has gotten 30,000 views, so it gets good coverage, but it's really hard to find unless you know what you're looking for or you Google the right thing, even if you're on the University of Minnesota Extension YouTube channel. And they don't like auto feed to one another. I have a series on buckthorn. It's a 4-part series, and it would make sense and it would be ideal if like part 1 then auto fed to part 2 to part 3, part 4, and it's like almost impossible to make that happen, which is a little bit crazy making. The other thing I'll say, and I don't really know how Google does this, but if you Google these videos now, it will recommend the most popular segment of the video. And and I don't know what that's about. The one that people linger on the most, they review. I'm not really sure, and I don't know at what threshold a video gets that. But it's a thing with these high quality videos. For the Facebook videos, so the presenter menu drop down, so we just have to wait patiently for a moment. I honestly have a hard time finding the ones I want later. Like I don't feel like I'm the best Facebook searcher. And so that's kind of a thing. So I think if there's a video that you think you might want to relink to over and over, you might just want to bookmark that because I have a hard time being a good Facebook searcher.
This has been super helpful. I think it seems like the emerging questions are like how the algorithm works, and from what I can tell,
I don't know.
Yeah, who know? I think a lot of people don't know. So, yeah, thank you so much, Angie. That's super relevant and important right now. And I'm gonna move us along to the next presentation. And again, Angie, if you don't mind, checking out the chat box after you stop sharing your screen and see if there's any questions in there to answer with the chat box. So next we have Nancy and Allison on sharing a little bit with us about planning a virtual retreat. Sounds super interesting. So I'll just let you all get to it.
So I'm going to start. I'm a Pennsylvania forest landowner that's been working probably since 2000 on women and their woods at a Pennsylvania Forest Stewards peer-to-peer training. Came out of a discussion there. And then in 2008, there were a couple of circumstances that started us on a more formal program. We had a revelation in a weekend that we had two programs. One was co-ed and one was female, and we couldn't get the women to talk in the co-ed program, and we couldn't get them to stop talking in the all-female program. And we recognized that there was something going on there, and so we began to do informational trainings, potlucks for women. And then eventually we recognized that piecemeal was not really getting to the heart of the problem, that women forest landowners needed more complete training. And so we've started these retreats, and we've held the retreats for the last 12 years, every other year. They're based on the Pennsylvania Forest Stewards peer-to-peer training. They take a full year to plan a retreat. They cost between, I would say, $15,000 and $20,000 to put on. And we do charge our participants. We depend really heavily on the commitment of female professional foresters and allied professions who volunteer to present and often attend the whole retreat to support further learning by the participants. We feel, since we've tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it over these years, that we are highly successful in building a cadre of women who have wept and hugged together. They've laughed and poked fun at each other. And they've been empowered to ask questions. We talked a little bit before about stupid questions. There are no stupid questions here. And they're really empowered to ask questions. A 4-day retreat leaves the leaders, I would say, silly exhausted. It's almost like being on 24 hours a day for 3 or 4 days. We are appreciative of the feedback that we get, and we retweak it every time we do it. And we were well on our way to our planning for the 2020 retreat when this came along. We had all our presenters, we had our locale, the food and the lodging, our field trips were all planned. And so now we're having to rehash this. We feel we've been very successful in building the comradeship, but perhaps not maintaining the community because we don't have the infrastructure to maintain the community. So I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and she's going to tell you how we are trying to tweak this thing.
Right.
And then we're going to be really interested in what you have to say.
Yeah. So unfortunately, our colleague Amanda Subjan, who was instrumental in this effort getting started, and wasn't able to join us today. So, but Nancy and I've been involved with Amanda since the beginning. So Delaware Highlands Conservancy, which is where Amanda works, is they were kind of ahead of everybody, certainly ahead of where Penn State has been, in that back in March, they just said flat out, there will be no face-to-face meetings this year. None of our educational offerings are going to happen this year. Whereas Penn State's kind of, they're trying to figure it out. So we're still in holding periods for some of our stuff. But because they did that so early, Delaware Highlands did that so early, we kind of had some time to think this through. Through Penn State, we'd been doing a lot of online courses and webinars and things like that. And so Amanda, Nancy, and I put our heads together and tried to come up with something that would still give the feel and flavor of an all-women retreat together, laughing and drinking wine together and learning together, but that we could have happen remotely. So we've come up with a plan for our educational retreat. Instead of a 4-day weekend or 4-day long event, we're going to 6 evening sessions through September, October, and November, every 2 weeks. We're currently working with all of our presenters to, first off, come up with and record about a 45-minute presentation using PowerPoint or shooting a video, but something that the participants can watch in advance. So that they're, for each of those 2-week synchronous meetings that we have, here are the 2 topics that we're going to discuss, here are the 2 videos for you to watch beforehand so that you have that foundation. We come to the live event, and the presenters who's given the recorded the session is being asked to join us at the live event with content, supporting content and or activities that people can do that builds off that foundational learning, and then time to answer questions and kind of build that. Our anticipation is that it's going to look something like this, that we're going to have a lot of faces on a Zoom platform, and as much as people can, encourage use of cameras so we can see faces. The recordings, you know, we're looking at Kaltura, which Penn State would host for us, which we can make available. We haven't really gone to the YouTube idea to host those, but our plan is these are going to be recorded presentations that the presenters can use, and maybe we can use in the future as supporting materials for going forward. A big part of what we've tried to figure out is what we had to cut. You know, we were already thinking, I mean, we already cram everything in. We are the bad facilitators who don't allow breaks in our days because there's so much that we feel like needs to be covered. So even cutting it back further to make 6 live events has been difficult. But we've tried to come up with that foundational learning with the expectation that they can carry some stuff forward. So I saw Purnima ask a question about the supporting material and content. So one of the things that we always start with is a, oh, Nancy, I just lost the word, a concept map. Yes, is that the right phrase?
You're bouncing it out of my head.
Yeah, the one that Nancy's got the whole how-to on in the curricular section of this group. So we always start with,
is that the cognitive map that you
Yes.
So yeah, no. This is the bad part of COVID. My brain doesn't work anymore. Thank you, Purna. So we start with the cognitive map, and our idea is that we'll build off that. So that first, we'll talk about developing goals and objectives, and then they'll be doing stuff on the map. Tree identification, we anticipate being a video, and so then there's a challenge. Maybe go, since that one will be happening in September and the leaves haven't fallen yet, go find this many species, do a leaf collection or something. Measurements, you know, we're planning to ship everybody Biltmore sticks and ID guides. We really like the Watts, you know, tree finder books and stuff like that. So, you know, we plan to buy those for everybody and send them to them in advance so that they have the tools, that they can do things with. So it's still kind of a work in progress. We've reached out to all the presenters to gauge their willingness. Nancy, I already know we're going to have to tweak the schedule because we heard back from somebody that they're not available. But yeah, we're asking the presenters to think of the presentation and think of that content and what that would look like and their ability to come support the larger learning. Angie asked, how long is it going to be? Like we're doing it every 2 weeks for a 2-hour session. So it is live and maybe some formal and then use of breakouts. We're anticipating that we'll pull a lot from multiple states. Our last, thank you, Amanda, our last retreats have been multi-state efforts. It's not just been a Pennsylvania thing. So, you know, that part makes it hard. You can build the community within the group, but then to give them the community back where they are, I think that was the piece that Nancy was referencing that we've kind of fallen down in because we don't have that larger infrastructure across myriad states to do that. We kind of look to the participants to do that. So, yeah, so we're looking for ways to make that community work. We've talked about breakouts. Purnima, your idea of letting people already know each other get together, encourage that. What else?
We have thought in the back of our minds, way back in the back of our minds, is the fact that we could follow this up eventually with a field day. Mm-hmm. And that by going online, we can extend our geographical area. And then by putting a field day in different areas, like Western Pennsylvania, we could have a field day out there, or one in, you know, Southeastern Pennsylvania. We could expand our geographical reach.
Yeah. Yeah. Angie, I like your virtual conference. We're looking to do that with our statewide walk in Penns Woods this fall, to have those virtual options for people, accessibility, who can't get out and see.
Yeah, I won't say too much, but we're writing a paper about that too, kind of like the Facebook Live one. So maybe when we get that done, I'm happy to share it with the group. We were pleased how it went.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate all this stuff. It's like, it's been, I'm sure, very stressful for everybody, but it just kind of, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot lately how it just kind of shows human resilience, and just kind of having like resilience in our message and the work that we're doing. You know, it's just like adapt. There's like some meme or something going around of Bear Grylls. He's like pointing at a camera. He's like, adapt, overcome something. And out for some reason, that is what pops in my head, which I don't know what that says about me, but still something fun to think about. So that being said, so we have about just a little over 10 more minutes. And because I want to honor you guys' time for the hour, but yeah, so Leonora, I'm curious if you could just sort of repeat what you had said in the very beginning about what you kind of wanted people to think about. And maybe we can start that off as sort of a conversation starter. But that being said, you know, if you have very specific questions about any of these presentations, like bring those up as well.
Yeah, this has been really wonderful. And if there are other ideas or things that have worked well that folks have had a chance to try out, we'd still love to hear you chime in with those. And if there are more questions as well for our presenters. The question I had mentioned was around things that have been so well received for different reasons. I think accessibility is a really important one. Yeah, some things that might even become a permanent part of the toolkit post-pandemic, or as we move slowly back into in-person programming. And one example that has stood out over here was in the feedback from the virtual chainsaw retreat in Maine. We heard clearly from someone who was really appreciative at having been able to participate, whereas, you know, with 3 small children, she said she wouldn't have ever been able to attend a full weekend workshop. So that might become something that we continue to offer in the future.
So we had some similar experiences about people really delighted that with the flexibility of the virtual conference in particular. But one of the things that we have become to appreciate a great deal is putting our agendas and contacts in a Google document that we share with our participants, because frankly, we've had a lot of trouble with things changing at the last minute. Like Zoom decides everyone has to have a password so we don't get Zoom bombed in the middle of a virtual conference, right? And so instead of having to resend out those to everyone, all we ended up having to do was to just change the link on the agenda, which was a Google Doc. And it turned out that saved us about 5 times. Instead of having to try to re-communicate the most recent change. And so our audiences didn't even, I think, completely understand how much was changing on the backside, because we kept it all in that Google Doc and we were able to make those changes really kind of seamlessly. But I would recommend that, because we had considered, you know, like a PDF, and then you send it out to them, or, you know, different ways to do that. And we were just super pleased we didn't, because in the virtual landscape, it just feels like there's a lot of unpredicted changes.
Yeah, if you guys check out the chat as well, I think that there's a really Molly asked a really important question about insurance coverage and liability. And then Jennifer said that their lead instructor purchased insurance through a grant. So yeah, that's definitely, I think, something important to think about, and also something that will probably vary state by state, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, it's important to check with your specific state on that.
And just another outreach idea that we were thinking of trying. We haven't done this yet, but instead of a field trip where you have everybody in one group, we've thought about doing more of like the Project Learning Tree field model where we have stations. So for like foresters for the birds, we might have an introduction station, a station, and then another station on different themes, and then participants, which might be families, can kind of rotate through the stations at their own pace. So ideally, you don't have more than 10 people in a group in one place at the same time. And so if we have, a couple of hours, like, you can be at the whatever forest from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on a Saturday, then the presenters talk and repeat ourselves a lot, but everybody else can kind of go through at their own pace, and we don't end up with a large group of people. And we're outdoors anyway, but we don't end up with large groups of people. So to try to mitigate the safety, but still get an outdoor experience.
So we've been using iNaturalist a lot, if you're familiar with that tool. And so we've done a couple of things. We do City Nature Challenge every year. And then in conjunction with our conference, we typically do a bio blitz at a conference site. Of course, this year it was virtual, so we decided to do a bio blitz across the state. And then we are considering you can set up like your yard project. So I have a yard project to get people to track the biodiversity in their immediate ecosystem. But that's been a really nice tool that we've been exploring more thoroughly. We've always been a big user of it, but because you can do it and be socially distant and still get some social interactions, and you can have prizes and awards. We always give awards for several top categories or whatever. It's a nice way to do some social distance outdoor nature.
Yeah, and I want to attest to that. So yeah, iNaturalist is amazing. And we actually use it at OSU as a grad student in some botany classes. And then also, I feel like I want to bring this up, but we don't have a whole lot of time, but it's just something to think about like I've been really curious about the utilization of just citizen science initiatives for this new normal, and just even using like the just like kind of the structure of citizen science, like you were saying. I think that would be like a really great tool in the era of social distancing. So maybe that's something that we can talk about on the next time we all get together. So I feel like that would be like a really long, cool conversation. All right, what else?
So just to kind of jump in on that, I'm about to drop in a link. I'm rolling out, 3 have been rolled out, and 3 more are likely to be rolled out, related citizen science projects related to invasive species. But they're definitely a continuum between crowdsourcing and potentially sort of proper citizen science that we were always intended to roll out, but it's been really great because they can all be done while social distancing. So I've been encouraged to roll out more, hence the 3 more that are coming. And then the insurance, we've been talking about it as it relates to citizen science and stuff, and when is there liability for the university and when are they just operating, because iNaturalist has its own user interface and acceptance, right? And so for us, it's really been, we've sort of landed that we maybe don't have a lot of liability in the crowdsourced citizen science engagement that we're doing because they're working with other platforms. So we're just asking pointed questions and gathering data, which is a pretty limited liability issue.
Awesome. Any other questions? Feel free to, if you need a subject change or anything, anything lingering on folks' mind.
I could give just another kind of a tip, like, so Zoom, we are all burned out on Zoom. I've been doing a lot of webinars more for professional audience, but recently I got to be part of a webinar that Purnima presented at on communicating with landowners about oak resiliency. This is targeted at Southern New England. And what we did is we tried to design it to make it as interactive as we could. We did gimmicks like, encouraging people to type something into the chat box. We would pause at certain points and require feedback. We used polls. We would pose questions to folks and they needed to reply in the chat box. We kept switching presenters, so people would hear a fresh voice every couple of minutes. It was just 3 of us, but like people would still have to kind of like reset when they hear a fresh voice come on. So within the hour of it, we were able to make it a pretty engaging Zoom webinar. The recording of that is also on the Guild webinar page that I shared earlier. So there are ways to make Zoom more engaging, and scheduling in breaks if you're going to be going longer than an hour, stuff like that. Can also help. But yeah, we're all burned out on Zoom, but there are ways to use it more effectively, I think, as well.
That said, on the positive side, I think people have time. So it's really good that, we are able to do this right now, because in some respects, people are more receptive to all these things that are important but not urgent. And it's an opportunity. It's a good time to hook people in. So unfortunately, I think the social media and all is more, it's easier when people already know each other. Like, it's easier to maintain connections. It's harder to start new connections with this kind of thing. Yeah. But it would be great if you could figure out how to do that part, because there's a lot of people sort of, looking for things to attend to at this time, as evidenced by all the people who have reported on new hobbies. So if we could get more people to think of their forests and as their hobbies, it would be good. But I don't see social media as being good at initiating that connection. Unless I'm happy. I'd love to hear your ideas if somebody has successfully managed that with new audiences or bring in new audiences.
I think that's such a good what you said about how it's easier to maintain connections but harder to form new ones. Like that, I feel like that just belongs in like a quote thing. Like it's such a great thought. So that being said, we have about 1 minute left. So I just really briefly want to touch on expectations coming up. So Leonora is awesome and took notes. And Leonora, are we going to be able to send those out, or?
Yeah, I think we'll do a summary and then also post the recording, just as with the last call.
Yeah, and then also I do notice that I think that there was probably some questions in the chat that it's like Tish, you had said, it's hard with these chats, like kind of going through and picking out the questions. And so maybe Amanda and I on the last call, we found out that there is a way to save the chat. So maybe we can kind of include that in the notes as well. And so we will do that. And then, and then we'll get that all sent out to you guys. And then hopefully we'll find another time to all get together. I've really appreciated being able to connect with folks over Zoom. There is Zoom burnout, but it's still a great tool. So we're at 10 o'clock now, but any last minute burning questions, Amanda or Leonora, anything that I'm missing?
I'll just say, I hope at this time we didn't take the time to do introductions, live introductions from everybody, but there are some really, really awesome women on this call, and I really encourage everybody to reach out. I think we can probably leave Zoom open for a little bit if you want to, chat or connect with somebody. But yeah, maybe this time we had some really good information we wanted to share, but on our next call, we might try to get back to more of the community discussion in part 3 of Reimagining Outreach.
I agree. I have a quick question. That taking the network hat off and the Oregon hat. So I'm a grad student also, and I'm taking an entomology class. And my professor is also a colleague through Extension. And I had a grad student discussion at this time, but I just moved it around, and I was talking to him about this. And I was just it'd be really cool if we put together some materials for women owning woodlands through Extension or through a grad school thing for pest management. I think Jennifer that had mentioned? No, I think it was Angie. You had mentioned the emerald ash borer. We were just learning about that in class last week and stuff. And so, yeah, if I actually have to hop off because I have a class, but like if anybody's interested in women owning woodlands focused materials on entomology or pest management in your forests, or if that's something that, oh, awesome. Thanks, Molly. Like if that's something that, you guys would be interested in, let me know. I don't have a lot of capacity. I don't have any capacity until the end of June. And then after that, I might have a little bit more, but I think it'd be really cool. So, but anyway, I have to hop off. So Leonora, Amanda, anything else you need me for?
Thank you so much, Kendall.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. Yeah, so anybody who wants to stay on and chit chat, keep asking more questions, are welcome to. I know folks are jumping off, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Yay.
Angie, will you make me host again?
Oh yeah, I was just trying to figure out how it is I could end the entire meeting. I was like, I don't think that's what I want to do. Remind me how to make you host again. I'm happy. I didn't realize I still was. I got to be honest.
If you go to participants, there should be an option next to my name.
We're always learning new things about Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, I think I did it. You're host now?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, I will leave and not dump everybody simultaneously now.
All right.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah, thanks, Angie.